These are people who killed animals reacting to their sentence. This is Alicia Cancioli, and she burned a raccoon alive. And the most messed up part is she recorded the entire thing. I don't recommend watching the video at all because it is very disturbing. But what I'm about to show you is Alicia reacting to the sentence that she got for committing this awful and inhumane crime.
And the first video is of this raccoon, and I know you describe it as some nuisance or menacing animal, and all you see is this little raccoon face looking up at the screen. And when humans deliberately make animals suffer, there is a justifiable cause for concern. You sealed your own fate when it came to how the public will forever perceive you. You will not be allowed to own or possess any pets. You will need to surrender those within the next 30 days at this point. Oh, well, I'll tell you that. Your sentence is 45 days in the Sarasota County Jail. However, if you successfully perform 45 days on the Sheriff's Work Offender Program and complete that, I was going to make you do it in 180 days, and they can't coordinate that, so it's 315 according to their math. If you fail to complete that, you will automatically be arrested and sentenced without any further hearings.
Some chilling updates in the Idaho murders. Police are scouring through bushes as they believe the killer may have been actually watching them and stalking them beforehand. Plus, they don't know what this person is capable of. As it's come to light, a dog was filleted and skinned only weeks before. Investigators have been seen looking through bushes near the residences as part of a probe into whether he actually hid and spied on them beforehand. The search has coincided with a really unsettling revelation that an elderly couple's dog only 3 miles away was slaughtered by being filleted and skinned. Now, police haven't linked the two cases as there's no evidence to tie them together, although it has raised some serious eyebrows amongst residents with concerns that someone may have tried it on a dog before they moved on to the attack. So far, over 640 tips have been received, 90 interviews have been conducted, yet they have no suspect, no murder weapon and no compelling leads, just some really eerie coincidences. Authorities are asking all local residences and businesses to please, if they have it, give their CCTV over from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. in hope of finding some more concrete evidence.
And sing this little song. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run.
May 19th, 1977, 20-year-old Colleen Stan was hiking from Eugene, Oregon to her friend's home in Northern California when she accepted a ride from Cameron and Janice Hooker. She had passed up 2 car rides previously, but this one felt safer as they were driving with their baby in the back seat. At first, the ride was normal until Janice and Cameron pulled over on the side of the road and held a knife up to Colleen's throat. That is when they kidnapped her and put her in a tight box under a waterbed. Cameron even had a contract with Janice saying that he would not have sexual relations with Colleen, but that was short-lived. He essayed her daily, causing her to give birth to 2 daughters, and even made her wear a 20-pound wooden box on her head. Cameron did a great job at brainwashing Colleen, as eventually she was able to work in the front yard, have her own job, and even see her family in 1981. All of those times she never asked for help. The reasoning why is because Cameron lied, saying there was an organization called The Company, and if she tried to escape, they would capture her and bring her back to him. In fear of Colleen having too much freedom, he eventually put her back in the tight box under the waterbed for 3 years. He then asked her to be his second wife, and Janice stepped in and started encouraging Colleen to escape. And in 1984, she did. Janice testified against Cameron in court. He received 104 years in prison. He was going to be released in 2023, though it was pushed back to 2030. Thank God.
You will not believe the horrific things that this woman allegedly did with her dog. This is Britney McClure, and up until a couple of weeks ago, she lived a completely normal life. Britney is from Michigan here in the United States. She had a boyfriend, and everything seemed to be going great in her life. That is, until her boyfriend decided to check on some of the security camera footage from a camera that he had installed inside of the couple's home. Apparently, Britney's ex-boyfriend had noticed that there had been some movement in the living room in the middle of the day, so he went to go check the footage. And when he went to go watch the footage, he could not believe what he was seeing. As he watched in horror, he saw his own girlfriend Britney performing an act on the dog using her mouth. And she was doing this with a massive smile on her face. And when she was finished, she tried to get the dog, the couple's dog, to perform the same act on her. The detective that's investigating this case noted that while this was going on, Britney was saying words like, "good boy." The detective even stated that in 2 decades of police work, he had never seen a video quite like the one the boyfriend brought into him. Now, Britney was arrested and charged with a number of different things. Obviously, this is considered animal abuse, and this case is just being brought to trial or whatever the process is right now. So we're going to find out more about all of Britney's devices and exactly what she's been doing to her dog in the house. But I just cannot believe this story, and I cannot even fathom what her boyfriend must have felt when he just went to go check the security camera video and saw that. Absolutely disgusting, shocking, horrifying, and yeah, just ugh.
The girl you are looking at has no idea that she's about to take the most unexplainable photo in history. This is 5-year-old Elizabeth, and this is her father Jim, who instructed her to sit down so that way he could take a picture of her in her brand new dress. He took a total of 3 pictures while his wife and his other daughter stood right beside him. When the photos were developed, Jim found on the second photo there's a large humanoid figure standing behind him that resembles a spacesuit. The couple came out and said, "We were in an empty field, there was no sort of bystanders, and I think we would have known if somebody was standing behind our daughter." Jim had the photo examined by Kodak Lab, and they said the anomaly in the picture is original negative, which means this thing behind her is physically present there, like it's real. This picture was taken in 1964. Obviously, there was no sort of Photoshop, but if you think that's the craziest part, listen to this. This all made headlines, and Kodak Labs offered $1 million to anybody who could disprove this photo. And to this day, it has never been paid out. More recently, people have been saying they have debunked this by saying it's really her mother standing behind her. And I don't know, her mother was wearing a blue dress that day, and they basically said the overexposure from the light made it look white. Here are the pictures side by side, and you kind of let me know what you guys think. So is this Jim's wife in the background, or is this something we've never seen? Make sure to like and follow for tomorrow's video.
You're not going to convince me this isn't a social experiment by nature to see how much f***ery they could get away with shoehorning into one animal. Platypus are built like a middle finger to the natural order. I'm not even finna waste time with what you already know. It's a duck cosplaying beaver with web feet that lays eggs as a mammal. They also produce milk, but since they're a mammal with no mammaries, instead they sweat it. So if you're a pug level platypus, you gotta get calories from mommy's arm crotch. Armpit. That sounded, I don't even know why I said that, my bad. They have no teeth, instead they use rocks as DIY dentures. They have no stomach, it goes straight down their gullet. Speaking of food, platypus swim blind and deaf, so they hunt using electroreceptors. Let it be known, they stole the shark's whole flow. Don't worry, it gets weirder. They have a 3-in-1 hole, literally one hole that serves every purpose, and apparently that was so fascinating that folks named their entire family reunion after it. Don't know what I mean? Well, after watching this, go and Google monitoring. Males have a venomous spur containing a toxin more powerful than morphine, as in if you get faded by a fedora warrior, you're basically cooked for months until the pain wears off, and yeah, it can take months. Their build nearly gave scientists a brain hemorrhage because the first ones to see it thought it was a hoax and that people stitched random animal parts together as a practical joke. Little did they know. Platypus have a 2-headed DNA hose covered in spines. Don't look it up. I did. I regret it. In late 2020, we found out this beaver-tailed identity crisis is bioluminescent. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Dan Povenmire came up with the idea for Perry in 1994, so either he or nature itself is memeing on us. Now I'm leaning towards Dan because you know what a platypus sounds like? And apparently we're supposed to believe that was a lucky guess too. With a track record like that, I wouldn't be surprised if he worked on The Simpsons. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but they're way smaller than I thought they were as a kid. Also, the babies are called Puggles, the more you know.
This creepy dentist was sentenced to 180 years in prison, as if going to the dentist wasn't already scary enough. So this is Joseph Clarence Cox. Joseph was initially arrested in April of 2021 after some really disturbing allegations were made. You see, 8 former employees of Joseph's testified that he had assaulted them during business hours. And these assaults in the middle of the workplace in the middle of the day went beyond touching and groping. In fact, 2 of the employees stated that they were raped and sodomized. But this abuse wasn't limited to employees. You see, 3 former patients actually testified that Joseph had abused them while they were undergoing dental work. So basically, this guy's dental office was an absolute house of horrors. In the middle of the day, during working hours, he was assaulting employees all throughout the building. And then when it came to patients, Joseph was giving them the drugs, getting them ready for procedures, and then began touching them and doing things to them while they were under. So yeah, once all of this came to light, Joseph's wife of 10 years immediately divorced him. And after a couple years, Joseph was eventually sentenced to 180 years in prison. Needless to say, he's going to be in there for a very, very long time, thank God. Here's a GPS image of what the dental office looks like. I can't tell if this is a new clinic or what, but it's absolutely unfathomable to think of the horrors that this building has witnessed. If you want to hear more true crime stories, listen to the podcast that I co-host with my wife, Courtney, Murder in America. It's available on all streaming platforms now.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the most disturbing, but this is definitely top 5. This is Malgas Island, and up to 60,000 of these birds called Cape Gannets will nest here. But don't worry, I'm gonna get to it. So normally these parents take turns, with one going out for food with the other staying behind to guard the chick. But because of overfishing, oftentimes both parents will go out for food, leaving the chick all alone on the island. Which wouldn't be a problem if they didn't know that. Because groups of these white pelicans will fly over to the islands and then walk around looking for any unsupervised gannet chicks, so that they can grab the baby birds and eat them alive while they're still struggling. And sometimes they'll just push the parents out the way and then swallow the newborn children right in front of them. It somehow gets worse. Those same pelicans will fly back to their nest and vomit the half-digested, recently murdered baby birds for the pelican chicks to eat. And because Cape Gannets have no real way to defend themselves, pelicans have no reason to stop. And since pelicans obviously don't have teeth, those chicks' last moments were spent suffocating while being digested alive by stomach acid, only to get regurgitated and eaten twice. Dinosaurs never went extinct. They just rebranded with feathers.
The captain thought he'd spotted a seal floating on an iceberg, but upon getting closer, realized it wasn't a seal. They were shocked by what they saw. The captain, Mallory, had 20 years of fishing experience. She has a big fishing boat. The fishing boat had a big name, the Nordic Pearl. This time, they decided to go out for 2 months. But on the first day of the trip, they had a problem. The weather was suddenly overcast. There were dark clouds. You can't imagine how oppressive it was. But they decided to work according to the itinerary. Early that morning, after breakfast, as they prepared their nets, they were looking for fish. There was a strange sound in the distance. It was very far away. The captain, Mallory, looked to where the sound was coming from. It seemed to be an iceberg floating on the surface. He's never heard anything like it before. He suspects it might be a seal, but he can't see the seal. Driven by curiosity, he decides to bring the ship closer to see what it is. As the ship nears, one of the crew screams. The mood on the ship changed in an instant. There's an outcry that it's definitely not a seal. You won't believe what they saw. Follow me to part 2.
Disclaimer, depending on when you're watching this, there might just be a gender war in the comments, which is crazy because we're talking about baboons, so you probably know the deal with baboons, right? Usually the biggest, most belligerent alpha males, the top ape, they're the ones that get the most, while the lesser males, the best they can do is get the scraps. And how does a baboon become an alpha? Oh, easy. Violence. Lots of it. It's like a vicious cycle. If the most aggressive baboons are the ones doing the most gooning, the more baboonery becomes generational. Except the cycle did break at one point. There was a point, I think it was like in the 1980s or something, where a bunch of baboons ate at a garbage dump, caught tuberculosis, and took a permanent leave from life. Oh, they dead. And with a lot of the aggro males out of commission, that left a lot of mild-mannered survivors. Now, you might think they took the opportunity to start big flexing, like on some bully become the bullies type shit. Actually, no, they were in fact chill like that. Now, normally the alpha males would regularly have temper tantrums and would beat on other males, females, and if you were an unsupervised minor, you could really get the Hulk to Loki treatment. But nah, these new males were kinder. They would spend more time grooming females, but not like in the weird YouTuber kind of way. And they would even babysit for other females. And since male baboons leave their birth troop to join a new one, new members would see this and be like, oh, so this is what we doing? I bet. Basically, there was a whole culture shift, and all it took was the bullies getting blacklisted from the census. And yeah, we're still talking about baboons here. The same ones that jump leopards and eat baby gazelles fresh out the womb. Those baboons, the more you know.
You may have heard about this story, but I don't think you know how dark it is. In October of 2011, a man intentionally cut open the cages of 56 wild animals he was keeping in his backyard, unleashing them on his town. But let's talk about why it happened and the man who did it. And if you don't want spoilers, this week's episode is all about people that try to own exotic and wild animals and their deadly consequences, so you don't want to miss it. So in October of 2011, people in Zanesville, Ohio started calling 911 when they saw lions and tigers in the woods. Police already knew about Terry Thompson, who lived in the area and kept wild animals animals in cages on his property, including lions, tigers, other big cats, bears, baboons, you name it. But in Ohio at the time, there technically weren't any laws against that. So though Terry was keeping these animals in horrible conditions, he wasn't really doing anything wrong. So the police go to Terry's property to check out what's going on, but when they get there, not only do they find that Terry had taken his own life, but he had cut open all of the cages of all of his animals before he did it. And to make matters worse, he had surrounded himself with raw chicken as if he was trying to entice the animals to come eat him. The police ultimately were able to locate him because he was being consumed by one of his tigers. So this guy John actually worked with Terry, and he said that the night before this happened, Terry received a letter suggesting that his wife had been having an affair. So that's our best guess as to why this happened, but ultimately 49 of his 56 animals had to be put down by the police. And lastly, and probably most disturbing of all, when the coroner's report came back on Terry, they found that his genitals were missing. And it was unclear if that happened before or after the tiger got him.
This is the Joe family tiger attack, one of the worst animal attacks caught on camera explained. On July 23, 2016, the Joe family visited Batting Wildlife Park in Beijing, China. This place is an enclosure where you drive your car around and wild animals walk around you. In their car were all 4 members of the family. Their names haven't been mentioned by the press, but in the car was a husband, wife, their child, and the wife's mother. The park issued warnings to all visitors to never leave your car, especially in the Siberian tiger enclosure, which is exactly what Mrs. Joe did. These tigers are the largest tigers in the world and can weigh over 600 pounds, and their claws are 4 inches in length. And their bite is even stronger than a grizzly bear. In the CCTV footage that was released, you can see Mrs. Joe leave the car and wander over to the driver's side. Nobody can really put their finger on what she was doing. She might have been yelling at the driver, but nobody knows. Nonetheless, it was very strange behavior, especially with a bunch of Siberian tigers running around. And seconds later, a tiger suddenly appears and pounces on the woman from behind. She appeared to be unaware of its presence until it was too late. The tiger knocks her down and drags her quickly out of frame. The driver, who is clearly panicking, is unsure on what he should do. He then gets out of the car and leaves the frame, then comes back and the older woman in the vehicle gets out too. And the two of them then run out of the frame in panic. What isn't shown in the video is what happens next. The older woman runs to her daughter's aid, but little did she know there was another tiger stalking them. You can see a park ranger pulling up, but even they were too slow to react, and a second tiger pounced on older Mrs. Joe, and then drags her away viciously. The park rangers then managed to get in and scare the tigers, and the younger woman was saved. She sustained horrific injuries, but luckily she did survive. Her mother, however, wasn't so lucky. The older Mrs. Joe died from her injuries. The video of this incident sparked massive backlash against the younger Mrs. Joe. Countless online comments criticized her stupid and reckless behavior, and in general blaming her for the entire incident. There's also many comments saying that Mr. Joe did literally nothing to save his wife, although that's not fair, because you don't see what happens off camera, and he was trying to fight off 2 Siberian tigers. Mrs. Joe's father said the reason she left the car was because of sickness, although this explanation didn't convince anyone.